Oh my gosh, you guys, I was totally bamboozled by my character of the week last week. I don't even know. I'm almost afraid to pick a character of the week later in the show, but stay tuned to see who I pick. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the General Hospital Snark podcast. I'm Mama Snark. I'm an old lady influencer. There, I said it. That's what my son-in-law calls me, an old lady
I
influencer.
love it. I love it.
I don't know what I'm influencing people
I'm
to
just I'm
do.
just an old school writer.
You're old school writer, yeah.
You can be the old lady, I'll be old school.
Hey, David, you've got some exciting news about a project you've been involved with.
I do. Butterfly. It's based on a manga, graphic novel, whatever the kids call them. Finally, after I've been working on this show for 2.5 years, is premiering on Amazon Prime on August 13th. It stars Daniel Dae Kim, and I work for his production company. So we are excited. We finally got a premiere date.
And
So
it looks like this is going to be really fun. It's a spy story, it's an old school spy story. It sounds really good.
yeah, it's sort of The Fugitive meets The Day of the Jackal. It's very old school,
And what was
but
your role?
contemporary.
What was your role on this production?
Well, I work for the company, so overall, like I worked like a script supervisor, making sure scripts were right, continuity.
Ladies and gentlemen, a continuity person. They do exist in the wild.
Things of that sort. So yeah, we're very excited.
Well, that's
Thank you for mentioning that.
of course you are. We keep talking about you doing things. It's about time people saw something you did.
There's a lot out there. You got to catch them.
Yeah, there is. So this week in Port Charles, holy heck, I will say for me, the most interesting development is that we're finally seeing Sidwell for who he is. My hot, bald baddie is finally coming into his own, and I love it.
I don't know. I was a little disappointed that like the judge was in his pocket. That was sort of the story worked perfectly fine on its own. And
Yep,
Michael did deserve custody of the children.
yep.
So that was a little disappointing to me. I don't know where they're going with it, but we'll see.
For me, at least, it shows that behind the scenes, Sidwell has been working his magic
Mhm.
against Sonny. Obviously, I mean, I think we can safely assume that the fire was definitely caused by Sidwell.
Okay.
And I will also say this, I'm going to go out there and say that the Daisy kidnapping is not Drew and Willow. It's going to be Sidwell and one of his people. That's one of my plot whispers. I have another one we'll talk about in a minute.
Okay. Yeah, the minute they showed the nursery, I'm like, oh, kidnapping story.
Well, I don't know if you know, I posted this morning the picture of the shadow of whoever this person is over the baby and saying, oh, obvious foreshadowing with an actual foreshadow, with a
Yeah.
shadow.
And you always get the POV of the person checking out the scene, spying.
GH loves that. The
Oh,
looking through a window angle.
all the soaps do it though. They're doing it right now on Days.
Okay,
They have
then.
they have a photographer taking pictures of one of the characters, the two women he's involved with, and of course, they're like, "Who's doing that? Why?" Your favorite, a trope.
Well, we are nothing if not our tropes, right? There's a reason they're tropes.
And I'll talk about this later, my soap recommendation, but watching old soaps really just, I realize so much what has been lost over the years. The day Gloria Monty decided that soaps need to be action adventures because nothing revolves around domestic issues anymore.
Right.
But now we're stuck with like the same three story tropes. It's very
Well,
disconcerting.
going through the page this morning, I was looking at some of the 850 comments on the Shouty Thursday post. And I
Oh,
can't
well,
tell you
hey.
how many people were like, oh my gosh, if we do another baby kidnapping story, I'm out. And I'm like, sorry, guys.
Yeah,
There are
yeah.
only so
Whoops.
many stories on the board, and that's
Yeah.
one of them.
Very few domestic issues. Now, not that I want to see soaps talk about paying bills and going to work and
Oh
things
no,
like
our
that.
internet connection is down. Yeah.
Yeah. But, if you write a good story, that internet connection being down could be a crucial part of a storyline. Like Joss trying to get information off the cloud in time before Dalton walks in and the internet goes down. Like, damn Spectrum.
I have a plot whisper that involves something that happened in yesterday's episode. So, if you remember, Jordan and Isaiah had that little conversation, and it felt like a wrap up to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, here's my plot whisper, and I'm sure half of you have already figured this out. They're going to put Isaiah with Liz, and they're going to put Jordan back with Curtis. And that's my plot
Oh,
whisper.
I thought they were going to put Isaiah with Portia since they've been chem testing them the last 2 weeks. I mean, really, got a moment to talk about Liz and Lucky and Rick and like what? I was disappointed because much as I didn't want to see a Curtis Jordan redux, but if they make it a triangle with Isaiah, but like you said, that conversation by the pool sort of went,
I think it killed it. And
nope, they closed the book. Congratulations, General Hospital, on killing yet another potential romance that the audience could get behind.
yep, you did it again. And I am neutral when it comes to Curtis and Jordan. They do fine
Yeah.
together. And if they really get into the corporate espionage story and those kinds of things, that could be interesting. Although, don't you see, I can see this right now. Jordan and Sidwell are working together. Jordan gets in trouble, and Curtis comes and saves her. There, I just gave you the plot for the next 9 months. But
Curtis is sort of a male slut on this show. I mean, look at how many women he's been with and like waffling over. But he was with Val for a time, if you remember.
oh yeah,
Valerie Spencer, who, disappeared one day. Jordan, was he involved with Jordan years ago?
yes.
Like then, yeah, and then getting re-involved with Jordan, then divorcing Jordan, and then Portia, another person he had an affair with years ago. And now they're breaking up Portia and Curtis, and it looks like he's going back towards Jordan.
I want Portia. They've got to fix that character because right now I think I'm not
Yeah.
the only one upon whom my nerves have been wreaked by this woman because she's so annoying and has been for years. She hasn't really done anything that could make me shift my perspective for a very long time.
Yeah, the writers really wrecked her with, sort of she objected to Spencer and they made it seem like she was going to do like drastic things to kind of keep Trina and Spencer apart. And that kind of like whiffled out. The whole thing with like switching the lab result, changing the lab results. It's just like she's so compromised as a character.
Yeah, Portia is not a character that I feel any affinity to. In fact, every time she shows up at this point, I kind of get icky. It's not that she's
Yeah, yeah.
icky. She's annoying. She's like the annoying person that is in your circle of friends and you kind of tolerate them because other people really like them. Although at this point, I don't know who really likes Portia at all.
Well, apparently she's Liz's best friend now. It's like, what happened to Terry? Here's the perfect time to bring Terry back to comfort Liz now that Lucky is gone. They could have come up, oh, what's Christina doing here? Christina or Liz could have said, oh, I was dropping off Lucky's last check from the bar.
It wasn't as exciting a week as we have been experiencing in the recent past, but it was still good.
Well, which is okay, but
We
yeah.
had some really good moments, I think. People are really scratching their head about Sasha and this need to be the single mom, you know. Let me tell you.
I want to be a single mom. However, I will live in your family's household and work for them.
So
And yeah,
basically, I want all the things that a mom who has a partner has, but I want to be the only one taking, yeah, responsible for my child. It's so weird. I mean, okay, I get it that she's kind of over everyone, but it just
Yeah.
feels like a really dumb move on her part. And somehow that whole thing I think is going to get fixed after the whatever happens to Daisy, probably today. And that will happen, the Daisy fiasco will last for a few weeks, and then all of a sudden Sasha and Michael may,
Get
change.
together.
I don't know.
I wouldn't mind a repairing of those two. And even with old Michael, she was pretty good with.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it was a decent enough pairing. I think it'll be more than decent with new
With
Michael,
with
but
Rory.
yeah, but otherwise it's like, God, writers, just leave Sasha alone. Stop torture.
She's not
She is
your
like
voodoo doll. Yeah.
we had a nice little span of her like not being tortured, but here we go again. She's being tortured. Why Sidwell might be kidnapping her baby,
It's
I
all about his
don't know, but
plan against Sonny, whatever that looks like. I mean, that's what their
yeah.
whole conversation. All right, let's talk about the conversation between Sonny and Sidwell yesterday. So Sonny storms off to the island and is
To
like,
that room in the tower where he's conducting all his meetings now.
Sidwell's lair. I love the contrast between these two guys, though, because on the one hand, we have Sidwell, who is just cool and contained and very logical. And of
Mhm.
course, you can see why this would be the best way to go. And over here, we have teeny tiny mob boss losing his crap all over everything. And I'm sorry, it does not make Sonny look strong. It
No,
makes
no.
Sonny look weak and old and confused. And it's very annoying to me.
To me too. And again, what happened to I got to get out of this business? That's
Stop
gone.
teasing that
Right.
unless,
Right.
because seriously, and that's what I said. Sidwell handed him the answer yesterday.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Sonny, because somebody, it's the old, well, you thought of it and it wasn't my idea, so therefore I hate it, even though that was what I was going to do.
I mean, I can only blame the current writers for, doing the wash, rinse, and repeat plot of Sonny needs to get out of the mob, but then no, he's right back into it because this dilemma was set up years ago. General Hospital doesn't know what to do, or they think they don't know what they can do if they got rid of the mob. I mean, this is the most corrupt town ever. Is there a judge who has not been paid off? I wonder. Laura is a terrible mayor, I'll say it.
That is a true story. She has no control over the city in any way, shape, or form, and neither does the PCPD. We
Right.
have our only two, well, we have three detectives because we have Bennett, but we never see
We
Bennett,
haven't seen him in a while, yeah.
which is too
Yeah.
bad because he's delicious and delightful. But we have Chase and Dante being cranky boys at each other. God, can we wrap up this Geo thing? I am
Ugh.
over it now.
Well, the
Now we
Dante part of it is just, everybody thinks like, oh, Dante's always been so objective because he can separate his dad's mob dealings from his job as a policeman. No, you can't. And they're showing that on screen. No, you can't. He's all pissy and grumpy cat because he's locked out of this investigation.
And now we have Geo being pissy and grumpy cat
Ugh.
because everybody lied to me and my whole life has been a lie. No, it hasn't been a lie.
Yeah.
You've been fine. Get over it. I'm sorry. I know that's flippant. And if it was a real situation, it would be a lot more to deal with.
Right. We've had a lot of our snarkies who have been in real life situations similar to that. Yes, it does happen. And they said, like, that is a terrible way to talk about adoption. Even the people watching it who were adopted saying, why is General Hospital invalidating my existence?
Yeah. It,
And
it,
it really is a bad look. And I mean, the problem with this storyline is there's nobody to correct that. Nobody has said your life is not a lie. People were not lying to you out of spite or meanness or this. It was to protect you. And it's just it boggles the mind. And I feel bad for
I feel
anybody who's
bad.
been adopted having to watch this. on their television screen. That's not entertainment.
I mean, we had this whole buildup with this story for the better part of last year, the retcon, and it was a successful retcon. But what we never
Yes.
considered was the aftermath of all this. And we have grumpy people, we have pissy people. What? I mean, are we just going to have to live with Dante and Gio being cranky at each other for the next several months? Because Dante cranky gets old really fast.
Yeah.
Because it's not really him, it's sort of this false thing that they lay on this character because when
Right.
Dante is fully Dante, he's very rational, he's very grounded, he's very reasonable about everything. And to suddenly find that he's losing his mind because Brooklyn didn't tell him she was pregnant, it's much ado about nothing. And I am so tired of there always being much ado about nothing. But
Well, we've said this so many times. Why are they doing this? Because plot. They don't know how to write it otherwise. So they just go by the easy route and it's like, well, the plot says he's got to do this, so we're going to fit that round character into the square hole and move on. We got our hopes up too much, I think, a couple weeks ago because that nurse's ball, those 2 weeks were so fabulous that we sort of forgot that General Hospital doesn't know how to do endings.
we talked about that on the page. We talked about it on the patrons page. General Hospital is fantastic at setting up their stories. They get the right people involved, they get the situation, they take their time setting things up, and then it just goes on and on and on and on, and it never resolves, and there is no ending. The only time we get endings is when there's a wedding. Oh, and even then there's always aftermath to everything.
Yeah.
And the aftermath is always so painful because it involves the following tropes always: blame and guilt where it is not needed. That is something that drives me crazy. Watch. Something's going to happen to Daisy. We're going to see 7 or 8 different people feel guilty or take responsibility for
I
this.
blame myself.
Yeah, I,
Yeah.
I actually right now I am blaming myself because they're going we have the aftermath, which is all the blame and the guilt. And then we have the people who are mad at each other for days and days and days. And then we have all the other secrets that didn't quite come out all the way. And it just goes on and on and on, and it never gets resolved. Not unlike the Christina accident thing. We're going to stop now and we're going to do our characters of the week because I'm going to start with that. So I was thinking about my character of the week all week, and I'm going to give it to Liz. I'm going to say Elizabeth
Okay. Yeah.
was my character of the week with a little codicil. So she was
Asterisk.
great. Yeah, she was great the way she laid into Chrissy. She laid it out. She told her how she was nuts. And, it was just, that was a great scene. But then she said, I'm not telling anyone. I'm like, why? 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 There's no reason. Turn her in. Turn her in.
Because Lucky asked her not to.
Oh my
Wah, wah.
gosh. A character who's off stage is making a character do something that is not. Liz isn't that person. Liz is about integrity. My character of the week with an asterisk. What about you, David?
Mine doesn't need an asterisk. However, putting aside the fact that Lucas and Marco are having a date at an axe throwing bar, yet are not axe throwing, because that's kind of why you go there. Otherwise, I don't know how comfortable I'd be, because I've done this. So I don't know how comfortable I'd be having a conversation where 10 feet away somebody's throwing an axe. But putting that aside, my character of the week is Marco, and here's why. Again, GH setting it up beautifully. And I credit the actor whose name I always forget because you really see sort of the pain and the kind of conundrum he's in where it's like, his mother is this terrible homophobe and she doesn't accept him, yet there's something inside of him saying, I've got to protect her and help her out of this situation. And again, he hasn't been on much this week. I mean, other than like being errand boy for Brooklyn and, delivering papers and, looking into Alexis's little
Shell company.
trust fund and
Yeah.
shell company. So I give the actor and the character credit because he's done a lot with that character in very little scenes.
I agree. I think he's fantastic, and I likened Lucas and Marco to Gio and Emma in the way
Yeah.
that they have become organically a couple. They're not over the top, they're not overly affectionate, but we understand the connection between them, and it feels like a normal, real relationship to me.
Well, the whole conversation talking about, and I'm surprised they brought his name up, Julian Jerome.
I know.
And
I
and
love
how
that.
Lucas's relationship was with Julian, and how Marco says he kind of admires the fact that both of his parents were accepting, but as Lucas said, there were other issues with Julian. And that's one of the things. Again, Julian is another in the long list of characters they ruined and then killed off. And the fact that he was never reconciled with his children during his lifetime. The day they decided they were going to get rid of Julian Jerome was the day they just started picking apart all the good qualities that character had to showcase all the bad qualities. And again, he was a very strong villain when he was on in the 90s, and he came back a fairly strong villain and just sort of went out with a whimper.
And I agree with you. Julian Jerome was a fascinating character, not unlike Valentine, who could
Right.
straddle that line between, yeah, I do
Yeah.
bad things, but I'm really a wonderful human. Julian has done that. Valentine,
I've done bad things, but I'm sexy.
well, which is why the I've done bad things,
Right.
so everybody prop me up with Sonny doesn't work quite the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're not hot enough, dude.
But I always think of it with Carly. It's like you really want Carly to like you if you're a character in Port Charles, because you'll have an easier life
It's
if you
true.
do.
Nobody
Like
wants
you
to be
can
on her
tell
bad
Carly
side.
likes Sasha.
Yeah.
So she forgives her immediately for not telling anyone that it's Michael's baby. She has a lot of grace from Carly. But if Carly doesn't like you, watch out.
You're SOL. Yeah.
Your life's gonna be hell in that town.
There were a lot of interesting short scenes with people talking. Now, I'm not talking about Cody and Ava, Kada and Ovi.
You mean dirty feet? Because that's everybody pointed
Oh
out.
gosh.
Valerie Catherine, who is one of our patrons, she has hated truck nuts since day one. A lot of us have softened on him. She has stood by her original estimation. And, I gotta agree with her because we keep rolling back to when he premiered on the show. And again, it's just, I feel like he's another character because Josh Kelly was wonderful on One Life to Live. He was able to play that kind of character, but you loved him
Yeah.
doing it. And I don't know if it was the rollout or because once again they had no story when he came on, but it's like up down, up down, up down with that character. And ew, Drew, it's like ew, truck nuts this week.
Yeah, at least with Drew, as awful and dastardly as he is, we understand him. He's
Yes.
consistent. We know what we're going to get. We know when he opens his mouth, he's either lying or manipulating someone. But with Cody, I still get the impression that the character is utterly clueless about life. He is truly a 14-year-old boy
Right.
masquerading in a 35-year-old body. And it's old, it's like figure out who he is and his purpose, because if his purpose is just comic relief and the dude who does dumb shit on the show, great, but let's lean
Right.
into that. Then let's not have those moments where he's having a serious conversation with someone. I don't know, you're right, they don't know what to do with him. And
And it's funny this week, speaking of Drew, one of the Snarkies said, "Oh, could you talk about the history of Drew's character on the Snarkcast?" And I thought about it, and I went, I've completely forgotten the history other than Cameron Matheson's Drew. I mean, he was a good guy
Oh,
before. He was
yeah.
trying to do the right thing. I remember he was involved with Kim. Of course, he had his kid Oscar who died, and the character did a 180 after Cam Matheson took it over because when you remember when Cam Matheson first came back and he was all grizzly like I am right now, we thought, oh wow, this is actually a pretty good recast. And then he got back to Port Charles and it was like, no,
The Cameron Matheson Drew needed to have this turn of personality in order
yes,
to make him palatable because he was just like a Hallmark character with no substance and he didn't fit with Carly, and so this shift to the evil side works, and it's the only thing really. I mean, we all go icky, ooh, Drew, and all this, but
right, right.
let's face it, he's interesting.
Yes.
Even
Yes.
his conversation with Kai, and I have less than zero interest in Kai, but I'm like, okay, how is he going to manipulate Kai now?
Right.
Because he owns Kai.
And people are already saying, oh, we got to do a murder mystery. We got to do a murder mystery. And I saw it this week. The murder mystery writing has begun. Trina screaming, I hate that man. And Kai sticking up for him. And then other characters saying, oh, if he was just out of the way or we deal with him. But again, I put no faith in General Hospital to do a murder mystery because let's look at the past, folks. Shiloh, who is dead, he is not Drew, killed with a flare gun by Sam, when that could have been a beautiful murder mystery. Everybody was running around town threatening him and hating him. Peter August, hit over the head with a rock by Felicia Scorpio. Again, murder mystery writing was there. We see Felicia do it. And actually, that would have been a good, if
Yeah,
they
because
actually did do a murder mystery,
no
I
one
would
would
have
have
guessed
picked
Felicia.
Felicia, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. But
agreed.
they're too scared to do a murder mystery. Now maybe things have changed. Maybe Elizabeth Corte thinks we can do it, but I'm not getting my hopes up. Maybe
I'm
there'll be an attempt, but I don't think Cam Matheson's going anywhere. I could be wrong, but we'll see.
I agree with everything you said about the murder mystery and that we don't have the finesse needed to pull that off.
And most soaps don't. Over the years, I know people praise the Loving Murders. And I really have to go back and watch that because I think pretty much all of Loving is on YouTube. I have to go back and watch that murder mystery because I remember being very disappointed by the ending, and everybody else in the universe was like, "This was one of the best mysteries ever," and I was like, "Was it?" But this is back in the day. I wasn't taping Loving, so I'm not watching it every day. Maybe it was. That's something I got to do on my
Oh
bucket list. Go back and reassess the Loving Murders because again, I've always been spoiled by The Edge of Night, which was a mystery soap opera. So they knew how to write mysteries.
So that leads us to David. Do you have a soap recommendation? Because you just were talking about loving. So,
I do, and it's a surprising one, even to me.
okay.
So many people praised Another World, which ran from 1964 to 1999. It was the first soap that expanded to an hour. It was the first soap to expand to 90 minutes.
Oh,
It
I
was the
didn't
first
realize.
soap to go back to 60 minutes. It was the first soap, I think, to talk about abortion. Many firsts. People loved Another World. People I respect in the soap stratosphere have always said you have to watch Another World. And somebody now is starting to post Another World, old Another World episodes online. So it's not really organized. So I'm watching random episodes here and there, but why it's so easy to get into, not necessarily the plots, because again, I'm watching an episode from 1996 and an episode from 1999, but because there were so many great soap actors that passed through its doors that I recognize from other shows. So it's easy to watch them because it's like, oh, there's so and so from The Bold and the Beautiful, or there's so and so from As the World Turns. Check it out, Another World, and let me know what you think. And if you're another
Wow.
World fan, let me know, are there good storylines, good years I should tune in because I'm just discovering that soap. And again, I wasn't a big NBC soap fan back in the day. And
I don't think I watched any NBC. Well, that's why I don't watch Days, of course. Is
right,
that
right.
was not in my purview at all.
And NBC never really had they had some high profile shows, and Days was at the top of the heap for a while, but they've never had a really strong soap lineup of all the networks. CBS had The Lock for years, and then ABC came along, and we all know in the 70s and 80s and 90s, even into the 2000s, ABC was the hot network to watch soaps. And you always see people who say, I watched the whole ABC lineup.
That
And
was my grandmother. My
yeah,
grandmother started with All My
mm,
Children, then One Life to Live,
then
then
General
General Hospital.
Hospital. Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, Ryan's Hope and Loving and The City and Port Charles were all in there.
Well, with that, it brings us to text messages from Wicked Stepmother. And she had quite a bit to say this week.
I'm sure.
First she responded to the podcast from last week. She goes, extra fun Snarkcast. I thought Willow's breakdown was super dramatic. She's always seemed rather passive to me, but not in court. Twill be fun to see where that lands her in the episodes ahead. And then we get the we haven't even talked about Drew and the proposal. That's a whole other
Oh,
thing.
no.
But she said, getting anxious for Willow to wake up and smell the rat in her life. That's an interesting mixed message there. Smell the rat, and
Smell the rat.
enough of poor Willow. And I agree. Catatonic Willow was fun for a hot second, but let's please not make this unless they're going to do something really great like a DID story or something like that. Let's move this along.
That old trope.
Yeah. Well, we are at the end of our episode. We're so grateful that you have hung with us at this point. Please follow the page on Facebook if you're watching this on YouTube or Spotify or Substack. Like and subscribe so you can get notifications of when we post something else. And hey, write us emails. All the information is in the description under this video. We sure like you guys a whole lot. You make what we do fun. So
Mhm.
until next week, everybody, goodbye, David. Goodbye,
Bye.
Snarkies.